Welcome everyone to the final episode of our series on the fruit of the Spirit. This series has been so good, and I'm kind of sad that today is the last one. But I know today's show is going to be so good.
We've been learning about the fruit of the Spirit from Galatians 5:22 and 23. What are the odds you've got those verses memorized?
Actually, I've been studying. Galatians 5:22 through 23 says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law."
Nice work, Josh. I know that we've covered a lot so far, but I'm hoping the Spirit is growing the fruit inside of you.
Speaking of that, I know we're wrapping things up here, but I want to tell you a story that helps us better understand the fruit of the Spirit. Sydney, have you ever grown fruit or veggies in your garden?
No, I haven't.
See, when I was a kid, my grandfather had a small backyard where we would grow vegetables and fruits. Tomatoes, cucumbers, beans, raspberries, strawberries. It was a ton of fun and we learned how to garden. But let me tell you, it's hard work.
Oh, I bet it is.
Especially in the summer. See, my grandfather didn't just buy seeds, plant them, and then forget about them. If we had done that, the garden would be full of weeds and not much else.
Right, there couldn't be many vegetables then.
To grow lots of vegetables or fruit, you need to know how to be a good gardener.
Like learning how to water and stuff?
Exactly. You learn how much sunlight the plants need, how to pull out weeds, and how to keep bugs away from the plants.
Okay, that makes sense.
See, even though my grandfather did all this hard work, he didn't actually grow the vegetables. He tried everything in his control to create a good environment for the plants to thrive.
So where is this going?
My point is, being a gardener is really important because you can help the plants grow or you can make it harder for them.
Ah, I see. The same idea applies to growing the fruit of the Spirit in our lives.
You know it. We don't grow it ourselves. That's God's job through the Holy Spirit. But we can make choices that either help or make it harder for the Holy Spirit to work in us, just like a good gardener helps their plants grow.
I love that example, and it leads us right into our last fruit of the Spirit this series, which is self-control.
And the main point is, when I walk in the Spirit, I have the self-control to do what is right.
Okay, here's what self-control isn't. Self-control is not being prideful and always trying to control the situation. It's called self-control for that reason. We can only control what we can do, but we can't control everyone else, just like in your example with the garden.
So true. Showing self-control is such an important part of following Jesus, and it's something that we can all afford to get better at. You guys lean in, and we'll catch you back in the studio soon.
Let's go for it. The show that tests your brains and strengthens your spirits. Now, whoever answers the most questions will receive a super duper awesome epic omega bingo bongo epic prize. So let's get to it and meet our contestants. First up, he's the teacher that you never had, but you always wanted. Say hello to Professor Andrew.
Oh, yes, hello. I am so glad to be here. I'm sure this show is going to be absolutely...
And our next contestant, well, his friends say that he's the kindest and most down-to-earth person in the entire world. Everyone, say hello to Jarius.
Hey, so happy to be here today.
And lastly, perhaps the most excited person in this entire studio, Diego.
Let's do this.
All right, you guys ready to play? The category for today's questions come from the biblical concept of the fruit of the Spirit, specifically self-control. Here is your first question. What is self-control? Is it option 1, throwing your Nintendo Switch controller whenever you lose a game of Mario Kart? Is it option 2, disobeying your mom and dad whenever you don't agree with them? Is it option 3, the ability to obey God even when it's hard? Or is it option 4, yelling at your siblings when they are getting on your nerves? Yes, Jarius.
Self-control is option 3, the ability to obey God even when it's hard.
That is correct. Congratulations, Jarius. You just won a lifetime supply of Chick-fil-A chicken nuggets. Way to go. That's for you, champ. All right. We're on to the next question. Who taught us to practice self-control?
I have it. Boot egg.
What?
You know, with the baby hippo, like skibidi toilet. You don't know about that, do you?
I don't understand a word that you're saying, Diego. Let's just get back to the questions. Yes, Jarius.
It's obvious, isn't it? Jesus.
By golly, he's done it again. This time, Jarius is gonna go home with a real life jetpack. All right, here is the next one. Which Bible verse lists self-control as a fruit of the Spirit? Yes, Diego.
A.
A wasn't even an option, Diego. Okay. Anyone else? Professor Andrew, maybe? No, this is stumping everyone. Time's up. Yeah, the correct answer is Galatians 5:22 through 23.
I think my buzz is broken.
We can all make excuses, but how about we just answer the final question, all right? Now, whoever gets this right wins the moon. Okay, it's gonna be great. Imagine this scenario. Jake gets home from school and he really wants to play video games, but he remembers that he has homework to do. Even though it's hard, he chooses to do his homework first, so that way he can play video games later without worrying. Did Jake show self-control in this scenario? Yes or no? Diego, it goes to you.
What game is Jake playing?
I don't know why that matters. Diego? All right, would anyone else like to give it a shot? Jarius?
I think I know what it is. Actually, I believe Jake did actually show self-control. And you know who else has actually been exercising a lot of self-control today? Is actually you, Professor Andrew. Professor Andrew's buzzer hasn't been working since the first question, and yet he's kept his cool the entire time.
That's a great observation. And also, it's a correct answer. Congratulations, Darius. You just won the moon. Now, before we end today's show, can anyone recap the questions that we asked today?
Self-control is the ability to obey God, even when it's hard. Jesus Christ teaches us this in his word, specifically Galatians 5:22 to 23. And in Jake's scenario, he did show self-control when he chose to do his homework instead of playing video games.
You knew all of that? Why didn't you say something?
Well, I tried to answer, but the buzzer's not.
That's all the time we have today, but we'll see you next time on Let's Go For It.
David was a shepherd boy, and although he was the youngest of 4 sons, he was chosen by God to be the next king of Israel. At that time, there was another king. His name was Saul. Saul was strong and tall and looked like everything a king should be. But God doesn't look at outward appearance. He looks at our hearts. Saul was disobedient to God, and for that reason, God chose David to replace Saul as the king of Israel. David became a great warrior, and after defeating the giant Goliath, Saul made him the commander of his armies. David was successful in everything he did, and everyone in the kingdom loved him, including Saul. But eventually, Saul became jealous of David. He feared that David would try and kill him and take the throne for himself, so Saul planned to kill David. But the Lord was with David, and he kept him safe. When David was warned about King Saul's intentions, he ran away. Day after day, Saul hunted David, but he was never able to catch him. One day, Saul was informed that David had been seen in the desert of En-Gedi. So he chose 3,000 of the best soldiers in all of Israel and set out in pursuit of David. During his search, he went into a cave to rest, but what he didn't realize was that this was the very cave where David and his men were hiding. When they saw that Saul was unaware of them, David's men whispered to him, "Can you believe it? This is the day God was talking about when he said, 'I'll put your enemy in your hands. You can do whatever you want with him.'" So, David quietly crept forward and cut off a piece of Saul's royal robe. Immediately, David felt guilty and thought about how it wasn't right for him to raise even one finger against Saul. It would have been so easy for David to put an end to all of his troubles right there. David ordered his men to step away and not to harm Saul. Saul got up, left the cave, and went down to the road. David stood at the mouth of the cave and called to Saul, "My master, my king." Saul looked back and David fell to his knees and called out, "Why do you listen to those who say I'm trying to harm you? This very day you can see with your own eyes that it isn't true. My men wanted me to kill you, but I wouldn't do it. I cut off a piece of your robe, but I didn't harm you. This proves that I am not trying to hurt you. I have not sinned against you, and yet you're hunting me down to kill me. God will be the one to protect me and rescue me from your power." When David finished saying all of this, Saul responded, "Is that really you, my son David?" And he began to cry.
He said to David, "You are a better man than I am, for you have repaid me good for evil. You have been amazingly kind to me today, for when the Lord put me in a place where you could have killed me, you didn't do it. Who else would let his enemy get away when he had him in his power? May the Lord reward you for the kindness you have shown me today. And now I realize that you are surely going to be king, and the kingdom of Israel will flourish under your rule. Now promise me by the Lord that when that happens, you will not kill my family." David promised, and then they left each other in peace. Unfortunately, Saul would continue to cause problems for David, but David kept his promise, and in time, he did become the king of Israel. He was a man after God's own heart and did everything that God wanted him to do. David was dearly loved by God, and Israel did flourish under his rule.
Talk about self-control, man. Sheesh. David showed some major self-control here.
Seriously.
See, Saul was actively hunting David down so that he could kill him, and David got a chance to take Saul out, yet he didn't.
Which must have taken a lot of self-control.
See, here's what David understood. David knew that Saul was the king God had chosen to lead Israel, and David trusted that God was in control of everything. So instead of taking matters into his own hands, David let his trust in God lead him to be obedient.
If God didn't want Saul to be king anymore, he could have done it without David's help, and David knew that.
I'm just imagining how tough it must have been for David that day. He was in the cave when Saul came in, and he could have taken Saul out, which would have seemed to solve all of his problems. Yet, his self-control and trust in God kept him from being disobedient.
Can you guys relate to that story? I mean, I know we'll probably never find ourselves in David's exact situation, but we've all experienced times when we have needed to show self-control.
It sometimes feels like there is a big war going on inside of our minds, and we struggle to choose between doing the right thing or doing the wrong thing.
Oh yeah, Josh. I was in a situation like that just yesterday. I was hanging with some friends and one of them started making fun of me for something I did. I was literally so mad and wanted to start making fun of him in return.
Well, did you?
Well, I wanted to, really bad, but I didn't. I remembered all the things that we've talked about here on the show, about being gentle, having goodness, and I just couldn't bring myself to say anything.
Way to go, Sydney. That's a perfect example of what it means to show self-control. Just like Sydney's story with her friends, we'll sometimes find ourselves in situations where it would be so much easier to do the wrong thing. Yet the Holy Spirit empowers us to have and show self-control.
Following Jesus means that we're called to a higher standard. We don't get to live or act like everyone else because Jesus' way is better.
Living with the Holy Spirit doesn't mean that we're better than anyone else. It just means that we're trying to look more like Jesus every single day.
And with the help of the Holy Spirit, we can grow in love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control.
We'll reflect the love of God to our friends and family so they can see just how good God is.
Well, Josh, we did it. We talked about every fruit of the Spirit.
I know I can say that I'm better after this series.
Me too, Josh.
Until next time, Let's Go Show. See ya.
Bye.